Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE English Language. Today we'll be concentrating on giving you a framework to answer English Language Paper 2 Question 5, the writing question. This session is to complement your lessons with your teachers and not to replace them in any way. So in the previous nugget, you may recall that we were looking at a speech question and I was showing you how we break down the question and then we went through how to plan the response for that question. So what I want to do in this nugget is to show you how our plan turns into a response, but I also want to show you the mark scheme and how this plan already matches some of the mark scheme. And obviously we haven't written anything yet, so we have to ignore anything about content because we've not written any content yet. But I thought it was quite important to show you how powerful this planning sheet is and how powerful this planning 6-part structure is, because it means actually we know we're on the right path. And we'll come back to the mark scheme when we've written something and I'll show you a bit more about how it links. But for now I want to concentrate on these parts. So content is clear and chosen for effect. And then organisation is engaging and connected. Now, obviously, we haven't got any content yet, but what we have got is we've got organisation, which is engaged and connected, because all of these ideas connect. And then even though we haven't written content yet, we've obviously picked things for effect. So when I said to you before about when you plan, you're going to add more detail than I've done, you would have already done that. So you're already up here. And then we just need to make sure, obviously we're not going to get marks for planning, so we need to make sure that that reflects in our writing, and then we can come back and have a look at the mark scheme. I know the mark scheme looks a bit scary because it's quite detailed and there's a lot in there, but we'll break it down and I'll show you exactly how what we write, or the style in which we write, can support the mark scheme. Okay, so what you'll do is when you use the planning sheet, that's exactly what the planning sheet is for, is obviously to write a response. So you're going to take it step by step. Now, I obviously don't have a long time in these nuggets, so I'm just going to show you how to write an introduction, because I think that is probably one of the hardest parts. And then I'm also going to show you the counter argument, because I think that's one of the most effective parts that we can write about. So as we write, I will show you the different techniques and I will talk you through why I've put certain things in certain places. So I said to you about the introduction needs to be something that relates to the question and links to the statement, but without it being a repetition of what's written in the question or in the statement. So because it's a speech as well, we need to make it really clear that it's a speech. So we're going to start really simple with good morning. Obviously that can change depending on what you want to write, but good morning, my fellow students, because it's about school. It says about school in the question. Okay, so it shows that I've read the question, I've understood what they want me to do, and I've kept it really, really simple. I know that I need to write a speech. So nice and easy. Our social, then I'm going to go straight in with my introduction. So our social media platforms. Notice how I'm not repeating anything that's in the question yet. I've literally just gone straight in with my ideas. So our social media platforms are overflowing with people protesting. Now, this is what I've said previously. I'm not repeating the statement, but I obviously have to use some of it. So I'm going to use some of the words to show that I understand where my focus is, and my examiner can also see where my focus of my answer is going to be, and that I actually am answering the question. I'm not answering about something random that they haven't asked for. So you can use some of the words, and I would recommend that you do. Then I'm going to start thinking about my DEFOREST techniques, because if I'm like you, in my planning sheet, I've added techniques, my DEFOREST techniques within the planning sheet, because I know that I want to use, and I want to use it within my piece. And it's almost like a checklist for myself because I know that I've then used it. So I'm going to use some short sentences. So I'm going to put for peace, for unity, for freedom. So nice, effective 3 short sentences, keep their attention, show what I'm about. I've also, which is your superpower as well, you can use current events. So I know, and you know, there are lots of protesting going on at the moment. I haven't gone into detail because that's not what I'm being asked to do, but I can use my current knowledge into my writing because that's my experiences. So I can put them in there, and that's what I've done. And then I'm going to try and show a bit of personality without being too rude to people. So I'm going to put for cruelty of animals in captivity. Again, I've used the words in the question, but I'm going to put an ellipsis there because I'm trying to show that I'm quite funny. Okay, I am quite funny, but obviously I need to be a little bit less funny in a piece of writing because I want it to show that it's engaging. I'm not trying to tell jokes. So I'm going to put something where I'm directly addressing them. So yes, you heard me correctly. So it's almost funny, but it's not funny. There's just a bit of humour there, that's all. So I started off quite serious. I've talked about protests. I've talked about what they're protesting for. And then I've brought it to the question because it's really important, as I keep saying, that we have the focus of the question there. So I've kept it really simple. I've got my short sentences in there. I've got my direct address in there. Then I'm going to continue just a little bit more about my idea because I want to set up a really strong speech here. So I want to show my viewpoint as well. So whilst I don't disagree that animals should be treated, of course, because we all think that. So we don't want to anger anyone by trying to be clever and going against what we think, because you need to write what you agree with anyway. Treated humanely, fairly. Look at my list of 3. Fairly and respectfully. So that list of 3 is such an easy one to use, and it's quite a casual flows in there as well. So I've got that in there. I can tick that off my planning sheet. These protests are, protesters, let's put, are the same people who are wearing leather coats or leather boots, fur coats, and let's put something quite casual but also quite funny. So scoffed a cheeseburger on the way to the protest. And let's get a little exclamation mark in there as well. So again, I used a little bit of humour, not much, but something that's going to keep your reader engaged. And obviously this is a speech, so you want in a speech your audience to be engaged in what you're saying and to agree with what you're saying. Then I'm going to use something that I actually love and I think is so effective. So again, we're going to use those short sentences and we're going to use 3 of them. We're also going to use some repetition, a bit like at the start. So double silliness, double embarrassment, and again a little bit of humour there, but you cannot be clearer than that. You can see my viewpoint on it, but you can also see the things that I've used. So I've used right at the start, this is a speech, really nice and clear, can't go wrong with that. We've then talked about, I've addressed the audience, I've talked about are, and I've also used it here. So yes, you, I'm almost talking to them. Then we've got the 3 short sentences and they all start with for. You've also got the repetition there. Then we've got an ellipsis. Then we've got a little bit of humour, very small, but some humour. Okay. Then what we do have is my viewpoint. So my view is there. And then again, I've gone for another bit of humour here, and then I've not even like ended the whole speech, but I've ended that first introduction with 3 short sentences and repetition. So already as an examiner, if that was in front of me and I was marking it, I would be so impressed because what they've done is very clever. And if we look back at the mark scheme, if we think about what the wording is, because obviously we're aiming for level 3, we want a secure response here, we can already see that communication is clear and effective. Okay, it's not consistently yet because we've only written 1 paragraph, but we can also definitely see tone, style and register is matched to purpose, form and audience. That is immediately obvious from the first few lines. We haven't quite used sophisticated vocab yet. There's a few in there, but again, this would, if it was a whole answer, we would do. We've got appropriate linguistic devices, and obviously in a whole answer, we would continue with that. Writing is engaging. There will be coherent paragraphs, and there is structural features. We've got some already, we started it, but again, if we were writing a whole thing, then we'd have those paragraphs, we'd have connected ideas, and we'd have more structural features and interesting vocab. So that's the introduction. I'm just going to show you how you start a counter argument, and we'll do the same thing again. Of course, I can't write the entire thing, we will run out of time, but in between the introduction and the counter argument, you will obviously have, according to your plan, your 3 reasons. So your 3 reasons from the question that you will write in a similar way to that, your techniques, your language features, your ideas. The counter argument I think is tricky because what you don't want to do, as I said previously, is contradict yourself. So you want to start with things like understandably, because you want to say that you do understand, but they're wrong, but you want to do it in a nice way. So understandably, you might be thinking, so you're trying to address what they're trying to think, might be thinking it is their right to protest for whatever they wish to. Okay, so I've addressed the other side 100%. But then I want to bring it back to me because I'm right, and I'm going to show that I'm right. So I'm just going to put something really short and effective, short sentence, but a rhetorical question. So, but is it? Because you get those audience members thinking, and they're going to start coming around to your way of thinking anyway, and to see that you're right. Then I'm going to put a little bit of a statistic in there. So recent studies, because I want to show that I'm right, but I want to prove that I'm right. Recent studies show that remember we need to write the words, 62% just looks more professional and more, maybe it's okay, but I think for me, I think if I was marking this and your answer had numbers in it, I wouldn't be very happy. So let's always go with the words. 62% of attendees at protests were there for Instagram likes. And I'm going to put an exclamation mark because obviously we don't like that. And then I'm going to end with just a 1-word sentence, pathetic. That's quite harsh, I suppose, a bit savage, but you can use different words. I kept the vocabulary quite simple because I want to show you how the secure response needs to be, and I don't want to overwhelm you with different words. But of course, you can use different things. What I would then do is go on to explain and link it back to the animals. So try not to just focus on one part of the question. This is just about protests. But what I would do then is go on to say about animals and eating meat, exactly what was in my plan. Do they realise they can do this? And almost attack the people that are protesting, because that's a double standard, as we'd already talked about. But make sure you're not just focused on one part of the question, that you actually link it back, because that wasn't one of our magic 3, was it? If it is one of your magic 3, obviously your paragraph would just concentrate on that, and that's fine. This was a counter argument though, so it's slightly different. So that's how that one works. But that's how you start it. So you start it by addressing the other side. So it could be that you say things like, I understand that you may think, but that's quite a nice, polite way of saying you're wrong and I'm right, and this is me showing that I'm right. And again, if we go back to the mark scheme and then looking at what we've written, so understandably you might be thinking, so we obviously got a coherent response there. We've got something that has a coherent paragraph, and we've got discourse markers because we've gone on to the next bit. So that's great there. Then we've got another short sentence, and then we've got another short sentence here. We've got some range of punctuation here. So there's different things in there that we can already tick off, and we've actually then done every single bit on this upper level 3, which is where we want it to be, and that would give us a secure answer. Now, of course, you'd need to write a full response. So you'd have in between your 3 ideas, and then obviously underneath your counter argument, you have a conclusion, just like it says in the plan. But if you have those 6 things and you practice this, your planning in the exam is going to be even easier. Because as I said before, you won't have this sheet in the exam, but you'll know yourself this is what it should look like. And this is one of the questions that can be a real opportunity to show off what you know. And it's a real good one to keep practicing. and it's actually a super effective way of getting those extra marks. This is a 40 mark-up question, remember, that's half of the paper. So the more you can get on here, it gives you a bit of leeway with the rest of the questions in case you've not done quite as well as you thought on a question 4 or 3, for example. But on this question, this is where we can smash out the park, and you can get your personality in there as well. But that's what I recommend you do, is when you write the response, then go back to your response and then start highlighting the things that you've used. So the techniques you've used, anything where you've met the mark scheme, if you can get one, but definitely the techniques, because then it will make sense to you and you can see exactly what you're missing or you're not missing. So I'm going to leave you with the question one more time. And in the previous nuggets, you planned your DEFOREST, you planned your plan for this. I would now go away and write this speech, and then if you give it to your teacher to mark, and I'm sure they'd be really happy to give you some feedback.